Hi, readers, it's Lori. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another episode of And Then They Were Murdered. So, this month's episode is about an author that I recently went to a virtual book talk about, and I was thrilled to see her there. And I made time in my calendar that day to make sure that I could spend the time listening to her. I had just recently talked about her because she had a new release that just came out, and I just grabbed it. And that is, you might have guessed, Sherry Lapena. Now, I am going to admit, sadly, that I have said Sherry Lapena all these years, and it is Lapena, so I had that totally wrong. There was no punctuation on the top of the end, so I don't know what made me do that, but I did. I apologize profusely to her, as well as to all of you. Sherry Lapena is a Canadian author. And before she became an author, she was a lawyer and an English teacher, which makes a lot of sense because she would be comfortable with words and writing and really describing things very, very well. So it makes a lot of sense to me. She talked with Mary Kubica on this book talk. It was a Barnes & Noble author talk that they do, I think, about once or twice a month, and I really enjoy them. I just signed up for another one, and it's about an author that I just talked about as a most anticipated read. But she and Mary Kubica had a great conversation about writing and about their careers, but mostly this was about Sherry and her experience over the years of writing and of becoming someone that is pretty well known and really well loved. Her books are now getting a lot more buzz than the first few that she wrote, which were comedies, actually. And she's best known for the first one that she wrote, which we'll talk about in a minute. So she did talk about some of the ways in which she approaches writing, and she does not overly develop the plot before she writes the book. In fact, she thinks about a plot, she recognizes the characters, then they start to sort of come alive with her, and then they tell her essentially what they're going to do or what's going to happen, which I thought was really something. So she said, if a character isn't speaking to her in some way, then she drops them. So they have to really be alive inside of her mind and in her writing. She also said that the young girl in Everyone Here Is Lying was the hardest character for her to write. She was 9 years old, but also she was an interesting character. So if you haven't read that one, I really encourage you to do so because it was quite something. She doesn't plant red herrings in her mysteries, but she does add some plot points along the way as she's going. So if somebody goes off on a direction that she's not feeling is working, she then kind of listens to them to see what else might work, I guess, which is a great process. She often switches point of view in her books, which is something I really like. So you get the point of view of a lot of these characters, which really kind of makes the whole novel come alive for you throughout, which I appreciate. She puts out a book every year, so she starts a new book every September, and then her first draft is done by the first of the year, and then by the summer it is usually published. And so, of course, by now she's already written another one and she's about to start another one. So it was really kind of funny to feel like we were in this space with her while she's got two books essentially that we don't know anything about yet, which is also, it's good, but it's like, oh, just hurry up. But you just can't do that all the time. She did talk too about her love of January Lavoie, who narrates all of her books. And I don't know that I've ever listened to one, although there's one that I am rightfully admitting that I don't remember a whole lot about, and I don't own it. So that's been weird, and we'll talk about that in a minute, because I thought I owned every book she'd ever written, and now I have to say to you, I do not. So I have to find that one now because it's important. In fact, this is still July when I'm filming it, and I'm on a no buy August, so it's very likely I might buy it today, but we'll see what happens. But she doesn't write like a first draft and then go on and redo it. Over the years, she's researched true crime, online detectives because sometimes that's something that gives her some inspiration or some information that's important to her. She also looks at towns and settings and things like that just to kind of get a feel for neighborhood activities, I guess, and how neighbors are. You may have noticed if you've read anything by her that she does usually have a neighborhood. Sometimes they're very closed neighborhoods or closed circle kinds of books, although the new one is more closed circle than any of the others, I think. But she also does explore families and the dynamics of families in a couple of these, and so I really appreciate that too. And sometimes I do, but more often than not, I don't see what's coming is coming. So we're going to talk about that in a minute as well. But I really enjoy this author. I'm very excited about her, and she's best-selling both in Canada and internationally, which is also good. There are some international covers. I really debated on this last one whether to get the UK edition, but I ended up getting the US edition instead, but they are really incredible. And she's about my age. She was born a year before me, so that's also kind of nice to know. Like I just like to be with people who are kind of in the same era sometimes as I was. So I think her life probably is very different, though, than my life has been. So the first one we're going to talk about is not on the list of mysteries that she's written, but there are two that I'm going to bring forward because they are contemporary comedy kinds of books, and I love this first cover anyway. Things Go Flying is a book that did not get a lot of ratings on Goodreads. A lot of people probably don't know about it. I didn't know about it until I started researching her. But this is about it's a comedy that's in the vein of David Sedaris and Douglas Coupland, I think, or Coupland. I've never heard of Douglas Coupland, but I definitely have heard of David Sedaris. So this was it got an honorable mention when it was first released for top fiction, which is nice, first fiction. And this one is about Harold, and Harold's friend has died, so he's really very depressed and he's really finding a hard time with this, and he's at midlife and just understanding kind of what end of life might look like. His wife Audrey is very controlling. She's not always, I guess she's really focused on the kids more than she is focused on Harold, and she has a secret that she's holding on to, and she's afraid that the secret is going to come out when their lives become a little chaotic because his mother, who's deceased, comes to life in their home and starts throwing things around the house. And so literally Things Go Flying is about their possessions going flying, but it's also about coming to terms with midlife and the meaning of life and how to come to grips with the fact that your family will never stop going on, right? Like you realize that your mother can haunt you, and you recognize that you may never be rid of that, right? So that's got to be a little bit scary. So that one sounds fun to me. And again, it hasn't had a lot of ratings, so a lot of people haven't read it. So that one came out in 2007. Happiness Economics was the next book that she wrote, and this one has even fewer ratings than the first one that we just talked about. This came out in 2011, so she was not pumping those out every year like she is now. But this one is about a poet named Will, and he's a bit stalled. He's not writing anymore. His wife Judy is an economist, doesn't relate really to his profession much at all. Luckily, she's able to keep them going financially, probably because it's called happiness economics, and so it is really about money, and about money in the vein of poets and poetry. So he discovers that there are a lot of poets that are stalled or not making money, and so he creates the Poets Preservation Society, which I think is so much fun. And he helps a woman named Lily White to be able to write and to be able to sell her poetry. And this, I think, kind of spurs him back on to writing as well. I'm not sure, but the premise of this is how we measure the value of art. And Coco is happy to say that she thinks this cover is really bright and pretty. So I just wanted you to know that. She wanted to be heard and seen, and so she has been. But this one might be one that I would pick up. But I think if I were to pick up one of these by her, I would start with Things Go Flying. All right, so let's get into the ones that are why we're here, the ones about being murdered. But I thought you might find that to be interesting because I sure did. So the first one I read by this author was The Couple Next Door, and this is the first one that she released. And I really, really found my love of Sherry LaPina straight out the gate. This one came out in 2016, which will make this easier, hopefully, if I can remember which one I'm on. So this one says it's a twisty roller coaster ride, which I would say was true for me. It was very thrilling. It was very well paced. I read it quickly at the time. Secrets, betrayal, lies between husbands and wives. How far would you go if you were pushed past your limit is the tagline for this. So this is about Annie or Anne and Marco. They have a baby whose name is Cora, and one night they go to a dinner party next door. And they leave the baby in their house with a baby monitor, and they go next door. And as I remember, there were some drinks and some food and some laughter, but then she goes home to check on the baby, and the baby's gone out of her crib. So the police come to investigate, and as happens often in her novels, there are, obviously the parents are suspects, the neighbors are suspects, right? So that makes that complex. The second one in the order, 2017, is A Stranger in the House, and I loved this one as well. A present you can't remember, a past that won't let you go. So you're at home making dinner, and your husband, who's supposed to come home, doesn't come home. The phone rings, and you go into a neighborhood you thought you would never visit in your car. You peer into a deserted building and brace yourself for the worst, and then you remember nothing. They tell your husband you've been in a car accident, that you lost control of your car, and she doesn't remember at all what happened to her. But when she's released from the hospital, she goes home and she realizes somebody else has been in her house. Something else has happened. She has still no memories. She's trying to regain them, but somebody's been in her house. Would you know if somebody had been in your house? I'm wondering about that. The next one, An Unwanted Guest, came out in 2018. This one was billed by USA Today as a book that would make Dame Agatha Christie proud, which I think is great high praise. And they were at that time billing her as an Agatha Christie-esque author. So this is Winter in the Catskills at Mitchell's Inn, and a romantic weekend is going to happen. So they have a couple of friends that are all coming in. They're all getting together. I remember one of these characters so clearly all these years later, but one of the guests turns up dead, and this one is, of course, close circle. And then a second one dies, and then everybody starts to panic. They're also in a very cold environment, snowing, unable to get out of the space very quickly, so they only can hunker down and hope that they don't get killed. I really, really loved this one, and I just remember these characters very, very much. They meant a lot to me, obviously, if I remember them all these years later. All right, so Someone We Know came out in 2019. This one is a book I don't own, and I have no idea why. I thought I had all of them, but I don't. So I don't know if I lent this to somebody, I didn't get it back, or if I just didn't buy it. But either way, I remember this book very, very clearly. I remember where I was when I was reading it. So there you go. But I maybe just got it from the library. I don't know. Who knows? But nevertheless, this book starts out with a woman who puts a note in one of her neighbor's mailboxes and basically says, "My son broke into your house while you were gone. I'm very sorry that he did this." And no, of course, this is a New York suburb, and this woman gets this note. And then we, of course, learn that he's breaking into other people's homes as well. So this becomes something that everybody's frightened about, because it appears as though he's digging into their lives and learning things about them that they maybe don't want anybody else to know. So who is he? Who's doing it? What does he know about them? And then, of course, more letters start to come and whispers start to circulate. And then suddenly one of their neighbors, who is a woman, an older woman, as I remember, is killed. So now it's like a scary thing. everybody in these families has something to hide, which is a something that she has done before, or something that she does later as well. But yes, this one was really, really good, and I highly recommend it. And I'm going to grab a copy of it soon. I may grab a copy of it today because this is my last day as I'm filming this before August, but we'll see. Do I need it today since I've already read it? No. That's the whole problem with me, right? Is that I can't stop buying books. The End of Her is the one I talked to you about the other day. I haven't read this one. I did get this one in paperback, I think because I waited too long to grab it. This one came out in 2020, I'm pretty sure. So that's probably what the holdup was for me. 2020 was a tricky year for all of us. But this one is about Stephanie and Patrick. I mentioned this earlier when I was doing my TBR for August, but they have twin girls. The babies are a lot. Everything is kind of difficult for them, especially for the wife. And then Erica, a woman from Patrick's past, comes in and says that his first wife didn't die naturally, that he maybe killed his first wife. So of course that freaks everybody out. Patrick says, no, of course I didn't do that. And so what happens? We don't know. But I'm going to be trying to read this in the month of August. That's my plan anyway. And then Not a Happy Family. This one was my first book of the month club selection for her, which made me happy that she was getting that buzz. I also probably don't remember this one as much. 2021 was not a terrible year for me, but I realized that I don't remember this one as much. I have a visual of it, and I have a visual of what I imagine the house to look like, and I have a visual of where I was when I was reading it. So I often have that, but the actual experience of it itself is a little not quite as clear for me. But this is about Fred and Sheila Merton, who have a lot of money. You can see this nice house. They have a lot of money, upstate New York, and very wealthy family, and they're murdered in their home. And they're murdered in their home right after their kids come in to eat Easter dinner with them and have an Easter event with them, which did not go well. I do remember that. There was some tension, there was some arguing, there was some dissatisfaction with their children and the parents, between all of them. So because they're murdered, then of course, and because the kids were there, they are also suspects now, as adult children often can be when there is a lot of money at stake, right? So the police start to investigate all of them as well as other people in the neighborhood. And as I remember, there's a woman in this from the neighborhood that comes in and into this and starts talking to the police. And so honestly, I don't remember exactly how this ends. And so I would like to reread that one. I would like to reread all of these, to be quite honest with you. I wish I would do more rereading because I love all of these. Everyone Here is Lying. This one was really a memorable one. You can see there's like a sort of a ladder coming out of a treehouse there. So this one is about a man whose name is William. He's a family guy. He has two kids, a boy and a girl, but he's also having an affair. So the book begins with him discovering that the person he's been having the affair with is maybe not willing to continue this relationship. So he's upset, and he goes back to his house and he finds his daughter Avery, who's 9. And this is the character that Sherry Lapina said was hardest for her to write. Avery's already home, but she's home alone, which is unusual because she's supposed to come home with her brother every day after school, and she did not. So he's trying to figure out how this happened. He reaches out to his wife. He's just really, really upset. Meanwhile, he loses his temper with her, like really badly. Avery is not an easy child, we find out later. So he screams at her, which is not good. So the next thing they know, Avery's missing. Did she run away? Did something happen to her? So the police are taking it as that something happened to her, but this whole community now doesn't feel safe. And the community neighbors are the everyone in this particular book. So they all have something that they're hiding. And it was really fantastic. I really, really enjoyed it. Now, these two are the ones that I have not read. These are the newest ones. This one came out last year, 2024. What Have You Done? Nothing ever happens in sleepy little Fair Hill, Vermont. Teenagers tell ghost stories in the graveyard. They have this ritual of going in there and spending time there, which is something that a lot of teenagers actually do. And the parents feel like everything's going to be fine and everybody knows everybody, everything's safe. They don't even lock their doors in this little community where they live. But all of a sudden, Diana Brewer is not in her bed and she's found in a hayfield and vultures are circling her. So she's been dead for a while. And so now the question is, what happened? What have these kids done? What have maybe their parents done? We don't know, right? It could be anybody. Could be anybody. Let me remind myself to tell you something about this as well. And then the next one is the one I got the other day, which we talked about. She didn't see it coming. Mom is at home working. She's been working all this time in her home. Computer's on, keys are there, phone's there. She's not there. She didn't pick up their daughter from daycare, which is how they find out what happened. They live in a condominium, as you can see, and yes, what happened? Who messed with her? If anybody, did she run away? There's always a question at first about whether or not, this happened or that happened, which I really appreciate. So what I also want you to know is her books are blurred by a lot of other authors, but while she was in this book talk, she recommended a couple of other authors that she really loves, and one of them I realized blurbed on this particular book, and that author is Linwood Barclay. She really enjoys this author, and she said that if we were to read a Linwood Barclay book, she would recommend the first one to be No Time for Goodbye. So I now have that on my want to read list. She also appreciates the work of Patricia Highsmith, who is more of a classic, and I have hers as well, Strangers on the Train, which I did, I think, read years ago, but I just recently purchased another edition of that since I didn't have it, because it was always a favorite of mine, and I really do enjoy Patricia Highsmith. She's written a number of classic mysteries, if you remember. I think she wrote The Talented Mr. Ripley. Yeah, let me just check on that before I tell you that, because I don't want to tell you the wrong thing, but I think she did. She did. She wrote The Talented Mr. Ripley. Thank goodness, which is Ripley #1. And apparently there are other books in that series, which I have never gotten to, but I have wanted to read The Talented Mr. Ripley, and because I saw the movie adaptation a number of years ago. But she's an older author too that I may talk about but she was born in 1921, which is the same year my dad was born, and she passed away in 1995. So she is no longer with us, but she leaves a legacy of great work. And there's a long list, and I wouldn't be opposed to becoming more of a reader of Patricia Highsmith myself. And thanks to Sherry Lapina, who recommended her, it reminded me that this might be something for me to take a look at. So thanks so much for watching this episode today of And Then They Were Murdered. Let me know if you're a Sherry Lapina fan. Let me know if you are, which ones were your favorites, if you'd like to do that. If you've never read anything by Sherry Lapina, let me know in the comments below, if you were to read one of these, which one would you pick first? Because I'm always curious about that. If you don't want to leave a comment, but you want me to know that you were here, go ahead and leave a Canadian flag in honor of this Canadian author that we've talked about today. And that emoji I know is there because I have seen it recently. A friend of mine sent me a bunch of Canadian flag emojis because she's going to Canada and she's super excited to be able to do that. And thanks again for watching, subscribing. If you haven't already, I would love it if you would take a moment to think about doing that. And it's easy to do and very, very quick. Thanks for supporting this series that I love so much. And all of my, this year, my focus on mystery thrillers is really high. So thanks to all of you for being here with me through that. And as always, happy reading. Bye.